The desert wind screams across the red rocks of eastern Utah, carrying with it secrets from an age when monsters walked the earth. In October 1991, a man named Carl Limoni bent down to examine something protruding from ancient sandstone, something that would rewrite everything paleontologists thought they knew about predatory dinosaurs. The curved blade of bone in his hands measured nearly 10 inches long, a weapon designed for one purpose only: killing. What emerged from those Cretaceous rocks was not just another dinosaur. It was a nightmare made flesh, a creature so massive, so perfectly engineered for slaughter, that it defied every assumption about the raptor family. This was Utahraptor austromaisorum, the giant claw, and its discovery would force science to confront a terrifying question. What happens when you take the cunning intelligence of a velociraptor and scale it up to the size of a grizzly bear? 125 million years ago, the land that would become Utah was unrecognizable. Imagine standing on the edge of an ancient floodplain, stretching endlessly toward a hazy horizon, where meandering rivers carved serpentine paths through drab brown mudstone and pale yellow sand. This was the yellow cat member of the Cedar Mountain Formation, a world caught between the death of the Jurassic and the birth of a new Cretaceous empire. The climate was semi-arid, punctuated by violent seasonal rains that transformed dry riverbeds into raging torrents overnight. Towering cycads and primitive conifers dotted the landscape like sentinels, their shadows providing brief respite from the brutal midday sun. The air hung thick and heavy, filled with the drone of primitive insects and the distant bellowing of massive herbivores. This was not the lush, fern-draped jungle of popular imagination. This was a harsher world, a testing ground where only the most adaptable, most ruthless predators survived. Into this unforgiving landscape came Utahraptor, an apex predator that ruled the early Cretaceous with an iron claw. Standing nearly 6 feet tall at the hip and stretching up to 23 feet from snout to tail, this was no delicate hunter. While its famous cousin Velociraptor would not evolve for another 50 million years in distant Mongolia, Utahraptor represented the pinnacle of dromaeosaurid evolution in North America. Picture a creature built like a heavyweight boxer, compact muscle layered over a skeleton designed for explosive power rather than marathon chases. Its legs were shorter and more robust than those of its lighter relatives, sacrificing some speed for devastating strength. Each step it took left three-toed prints in the ancient mud, but it was that fourth digit, held permanently retracted off the ground like a switchblade waiting to deploy, that told the real story. That enlarged second-toe claw was a masterpiece of evolutionary engineering. When sheathed in the sharp keratin covering that all living reptiles possess, the largest known specimen would have measured a full 9.5 inches of curved death. Scientists at Utah State University who studied the biomechanics discovered something chilling. Unlike the puncturing weapons of cats or the slashing attacks of modern raptors, Utahraptor's sickle claw was designed to do both. The curve was perfect for hooking into flesh, the point sharp enough to pierce thick hide, the serrated edge capable of opening catastrophic wounds with a single downward slash. Imagine being hunted by something that combined the gripping power of an eagle's talon with the cutting efficiency of a surgical scalpel, all driven by leg muscles that could generate over 1,000 pounds of force. But the claws were only part of the arsenal. Utahraptor's skull, though fragmentary in the original fossil discovery, reveals a predator with frighteningly advanced sensory capabilities. Its eyes faced forward, providing the kind of binocular vision that modern birds of prey possess, allowing it to judge distances with deadly accuracy. Recent studies of its inner ear structure suggest it could detect low-frequency sounds, the kind produced by the rumbling footsteps of large herbivores or the distress calls of injured prey echoing across kilometers of open landscape. The jaws themselves were lined with dozens of recurved teeth, each one serrated on both edges like a steak knife, designed not just to pierce, but to saw through flesh and sinew. When Utahraptor bit down, its victims did not simply experience puncture wounds. They experienced systematic dismemberment. Here is where the story takes a turn toward the controversial, toward questions that have divided the paleontological community and sparked heated debates at conferences worldwide. Did Utahraptor hunt alone, a solitary apex predator too powerful to need assistance? Or did it hunt in coordinated packs, employing strategies that would make wolf packs look primitive by comparison? The answer may lie entombed in 9 tons of sandstone, waiting for patient hands and precise tools to reveal its secrets. In 2001, a graduate student following up on a tip discovered something protruding from a rocky ridge high above Arches National Park. What Utah State paleontologist James Kirkland and his team eventually excavated would become one of the most significant dinosaur discoveries of the 21st century. The Styx Quarry megablock contains the fossilized remains of at least 6 Utahraptor individuals, possibly more than 12 by current estimates, ranging from babies barely 3 feet long to massive adults approaching the species' maximum size. And they all died together, their bones intermingled and stacked 3 feet deep in places, surrounded by the remains of at least one large iguanodontid herbivore. The sediment analysis revealed something extraordinary. This was ancient quicksand, a dewatering feature that functioned like organic flypaper 125 million years ago. Kirkland's hypothesis reads like a prehistoric crime scene reconstruction. An iguanodont, perhaps weakened by injury or thirst, blundered into a quicksand boil near an ancient lakeshore. Its struggles would have sent vibrations through the ground and distress calls across the landscape. Then they came. Perhaps one adult Utahraptor initially, testing the situation, moving in close. But quicksand does not discriminate between predator and prey. The first hunter became trapped, its cries now adding to the cacophony. Did others come because they were a coordinated pack, working together? Or were they drawn independently by the promise of easy meat, a feeding frenzy that turned into a mass grave? The bones may hold the answer. If preparation reveals limbs tangled together, if the weathering patterns suggest simultaneous burial, then science will have to accept what Jurassic Park suggested years before any fossil evidence existed. Some raptors hunted in organized groups. The implications are staggering. Modern pack hunters like wolves and lions require complex social structures, communication systems, and most importantly, significant intelligence. They must recognize pack members, coordinate attacks, sometimes even divide prey according to social rank. If Utahraptor possessed these capabilities, then we are looking at a Cretaceous predator with cognitive abilities that rivaled, perhaps exceeded, those of any other dinosaur. Parents would have taught juveniles hunting techniques through demonstration and practice. The pack might have developed specific roles, with lighter juveniles harassing prey from the flanks, while massive adults delivered killing blows. Some individuals might have served as lookouts, while others fed. This was not mindless reptilian aggression. This was calculated, intelligent warfare. But intelligence and social behavior are only part of what made Utahraptor so successful. The creature's body was covered in feathers, though not the flight feathers we see in modern birds. Based on its close evolutionary relationship to smaller dromaeosaurids like Velociraptor and Dakotaraptor, both of which have preserved feather evidence including quill knobs on their arm bones, Paleontologists are confident that Utahraptor bore plumage despite no direct fossil evidence yet discovered in the sandstone. Picture dense, downy feathers covering much of the body for insulation, perhaps with longer display feathers along the arms and tail. These were not decorative. Young Utahraptor may have used their arm feathers for wing-assisted incline running, a behavior observed in modern ground birds, allowing them to scale steep surfaces or maintain balance while attacking prey. Adult males might have sported elaborate color patterns, turning their feathers into weapons of sexual selection. Imagine a 7-meter predator with feathers that caught the early morning light like liquid copper, or patterns that helped it blend into the dappled shadows beneath ancient conifers. This was a bird in function, a dragon in form, and a demon in purpose. The world Utahraptor inhabited was itself a crucible of change. The early Cretaceous marked a pivotal moment in Earth's history when the supercontinent Pangaea continued its slow-motion fracture into the continents we recognize today. North America was drifting westward, and the fossil record preserved in the Cedar Mountain Formation captures this transition in stunning detail. The older fossils in the lower yellow cat member show European affinities, dinosaurs whose closest relatives lived across what is now the Atlantic Ocean. But as millions of years passed and the continent drifted, the fauna began to show Asian characteristics, with relatives in what would become Mongolia and China. Utahraptor lived at the beginning of this transformation, an American original that would have no direct descendants as the world reshaped itself beneath its feet. The landscape itself was treacherous in ways modern animals never experience. Rivers would flood catastrophically during seasonal monsoons, then vanish entirely during months-long droughts. Quicksand lurked wherever groundwater met loose sediment. Volcanic ash from distant eruptions occasionally blanketed the region, choking the air and poisoning water sources. Massive sauropods like Cedarosaurus and Moabosaurus shook the ground with their passage, herds so large they could strip entire groves of vegetation in days. Armored dinosaurs like Gastonia, covered in spikes and bony plates, presented challenges that would test even Utahraptor's formidable weaponry. To survive here required not just physical prowess, but adaptability, problem-solving, and perhaps most critically, the ability to learn and remember. James Kirkland's decades-long investigation into Utahraptor has revealed a creature that defied the typical pattern of dinosaur evolution. Usually, lineages tend toward increasing size over time, but Utahraptor appeared early in the Dromaeosaurid family tree, a giant ancestor that preceded its smaller descendants by tens of millions of years. This reversal suggests something fascinating about Cretaceous North America. There was an ecological niche for massive, intelligent pack predators, and Utahraptor filled it before anyone else could. When conditions changed, when the western interior seaway began flooding into the continent's heart and transforming landscapes, the giant raptors could not adapt. The future belonged to smaller, more agile hunters. But for a brief, glorious span of geological time, Utahraptor was king. The discovery has had ripples extending far beyond academic paleontology. In 2025, Utah officially designated Utahraptor as its state dinosaur, recognizing not just the creature's scientific importance, but its symbolic power. Utahraptor State Park now protects the Dalton Wells Quarry, where over 5,500 bones representing more than 10 dinosaur species have been excavated over 45 years of systematic digging. The park's creation acknowledges something profound. These are not just rocks with shapes in them. They are the preserved bodies of real animals that lived, hunted, raised young, and died in a world we can barely imagine. When you stand on that Utah ridgeline today, knowing that beneath your feet lie the remains of a family of predators who died together in a moment of ancient tragedy, you cannot help but feel a connection across the abyss of time. The megablock itself remains under preparation in laboratories at the Utah Geological Survey. Teams of skilled preparators work with dental tools and brushes, spending years carefully exposing bones from the rock matrix 1 millimeter at a time. Every bone fragment could answer questions that have haunted paleontology for decades. Will they find evidence of injuries healing, proof that pack members cared for wounded companions? Will stomach contents reveal what prey items were preferred? Will they discover preserved soft tissue, perhaps even fragments of those hypothesized feathers, captured in microscopic detail by the rapidly hardening quicksand? The block is so dense with fossils that breaking it apart risks destroying unique specimens, so progress is methodical, painstaking, and absolutely crucial. What makes Utahraptor culturally significant extends beyond science into the realm of mythology. When Steven Spielberg enlarged his velociraptors to human height for Jurassic Park in 1993, he unknowingly predicted a discovery that was announced mere months after the film's release. The timing was so perfect that some suggested naming the new species Utahraptor spielbergi in his honor, though negotiations over financial support for research ultimately led to the current scientific name, honoring John Ostrom and Chris Mays instead. But the synchronicity between fiction and fossil revelation speaks to something deeper: humanity's enduring fascination with predatory intelligence, with creatures that combine physical power and mental acuity in ways that make them mirror images of our own evolutionary strategy. We are drawn to Utahraptor because we recognize something of ourselves in it: the hunter that thinks, the pack that coordinates, the parent that teaches. Modern paleontology continues to revolutionize our understanding. Three-dimensional photogrammetry creates detailed digital models of every exposed bone in the megablock, allowing researchers worldwide to study the fossils without traveling to Utah. Biomechanical analyses using computer simulations test hypotheses about how Utahraptor moved, how it attacked, how much force its legs could generate. Chemical analysis of the surrounding rock reveals details about ancient climate, plant life, and seasonal variations. Every new technique brings fresh insights, and every insight generates new questions. How long did Utahraptor live? Growth ring analysis of bone cross-sections suggests rapid growth in early years, reaching sexual maturity around 7 to 10 years of age. Did they form lifelong pair bonds like some modern raptors? Did they defend territories? How did juveniles learn to use their terrible claws without injuring themselves or siblings? The evolutionary legacy of Utahraptor extends directly into the present. Every bird that flies today, from the tiny hummingbird to the massive condor, carries genetic blueprints inherited from dromaeosaurid ancestors. The feathers, the lightweight hollow bones, the efficient respiratory system, the acute vision, all of these innovations were being perfected in creatures like Utahraptor millions of years before the first bird achieved powered flight. When you watch a hawk diving on prey, talons extended in that same raptorial pose that Utahraptor employed, you're witnessing a hunting technique that evolution found so effective it has been preserved across 125 million years. The past is not dead. It is not even past. It lives in every bird's eye, in every curved claw, in every coordinated flock moving as one mind with distributed consciousness. Standing at the edge of time, looking back into the deep well of the Cretaceous, Utahraptor emerges not as a monster, but as a masterpiece. It was a creature perfectly adapted to its moment, to its place, to its ecological role. When conditions changed and the world moved on, Utahraptor could not follow. Its kind vanished from the fossil record, outcompeted or outflanked by newer models, smaller and perhaps more flexible. But failure is the wrong word for an animal that dominated its ecosystem for millions of years, that may have developed complex social behaviors, that successfully raised generations of young in one of Earth's most challenging environments. Success in evolution is not measured by eternal survival, but by how well a species meets the challenges of its time. By that measure, Utahraptor succeeded spectacularly. The giant claw waits now in stone, its bones gradually emerging from their sandstone tomb as patient humans work to free them from 125 million years of burial. What stories will those bones tell when they finally speak? What will we learn about intelligence in non-mammalian minds, about the evolution of social behavior, about the endless creativity of natural selection? The desert wind that screamed across Utah in 1991 still screams today, but now it carries different secrets, questions rather than answers, invitations to look deeper into time's mirror and see reflected there, not aliens from another world, but neighbors from another age. Utahraptor lived. It hunted under the same sun that warms us now. It felt pain and hunger, and perhaps even something we might recognize as joy. And when it died, trapped in quicksand beside its packmates and prey, it became something more than just an animal. It became a message in a bottle, cast across the ocean of time, waiting for anyone brave enough to read what it has to say about the nature of life, death, and the beautiful, terrible struggle to survive on this ancient, ever-changing Earth.